Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. You already heard the intro. I am so excited to bring this next person on the show because she's seen something, not just something, guys. She's seen over 195 countries. You already know what time it is. We have the best-selling author herself in the building, Jessica Nabongo. What's going on, fam?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Listen, I'm so excited to have you here. I know our audience, one, guys, if you haven't had the book already or you're going through the show notes trying to click the link and purchase the book, I want to break this down for somebody right now who's like looking at you saying, okay, where does she start at, right? You know, there's this thing, where's Jessica? Like, where are you from? And take us back to that like young girl growing up.
Yeah, so I'm from Detroit, and my parents are from Uganda, so I think my experience is definitely unique for people growing up in Detroit because obviously it's that immigrant experience. But yeah, that little girl in Detroit had some amazing parents. I have two sisters. And I think what I always say is like my parents really never put boundaries on my sisters and I. So we really truly felt and knew that anything was possible. With regard to travel, I've been traveling internationally since I was 4. But I think beyond that, it's about growing up in a house with a ton of books. I used to
Mm.
read like crazy. I mean, I still read like crazy. Even now, I was an English literature major in undergrad. And so to me, so much of that is what made me who I am. But I think the most important part is that my parents never put boundaries on us and having access to a lot of books.
Oh man, listen, the father in me is like really fascinated by that because I always like to have, powerful, dope women who've done things, and you're definitely an example of that. So now I'm like looking back as you're talking, like, do I got the right books? Like, do you remember what was some of those books that like helped you to dream and think bigger than just Detroit?
Well, I think a lot was like Dr. Seuss books.
Mm.
I used to read like choose your own adventure books. My sister was very into Goosebumps. I wasn't that. I would read them sometimes because she's older than me. I would read them sometimes, but I was like, this is so scary. I read encyclopedias,
Mm.
atlases, but I'm a nerd, so I think people think I'm so cool, but I'm like, I'm a really cool nerd.
Listen, I mean, one thing that I learned about you is that you did, had several different levels of education, but not just in like the US. Tell us a little bit about like your education journey. I know you spent some time in Rome as well.
Yeah, well, as far as education, so I did undergrad at St. John's in New York, and then I did my master's at the London School of Economics, which was
Mm.
and obviously it's a world class institution, the number one university in London. But but yeah, it was really great because I got to meet people from all over the world. Like, it's such a hugely international university. So that was an amazing part of the learning process. When I lived in Rome, I was actually working for the UN there.
Mm. God, that's dope. I mean, you're definitely well traveled. I got so many questions for you, but also I pay attention to some of the things you've said, like in past interviews. And I think also our listener right now, they hear 195 countries. They're saying, yo, Shawn, I don't even know if I can make it to 5 of them. How expensive does this get? You said on a Breakfast Club interview, which I thought was very interesting, chase the deal, not the destination, in terms of like some of the best ways to travel. Like, what would be some of your advice to someone who's saying, all right, how can I do this? How can I get out there more?
So I would say exactly that. Chase the deal, not the destination. You can sign up for websites like theflightdeal.com or airfarespot.com, really to just get these emails daily. And then whenever you see something in your budget, you can just take that trip. So whether that's a
Mm.
trip to Peru or I don't know, Jamaica or Paris, wherever it is, if you just want to travel just means to leave your home. And I think if you're on a restricted budget, that's probably going to be the easiest way to be able to travel for less money.
Oh, I love that advice. Love those tips. And guys, there's levels to this, right? There's things you got to do before you go out here and do all these amazing things that Jessica did. And one thing that I like about you that I noticed is that it all started really sounds like with a blog, right? Tell us about like somebody right now, listeners, they have a blog they're doing or they have a blog idea, but they don't know how it can turn into an actual adventure, how it can turn into a book. Like, what gave you the idea for the Catch Me type of blog that you created, which eventually led to this amazing book?
Well, it's really funny because like I don't make any money from my blog and I never have. And so, to me, I always say to people, what is your why?
Mm,
Right. So I started my blog, The Catch Me If You Can, in 2009, and I've never made a penny from it.
wow.
And granted, like I don't blog anymore. And yes, I know I can make money from my blog. So everyone just I know, I understand that. It's just not a focus of mine because I never started my blog with the intent to earn money from it. I started my blog with the intent to share my travels
Mm,
because I was traveling anyway. You know what I mean? And
mhm.
so I think nowadays a lot of people are thinking about things backward. They're like, what can I do for money? Instead of thinking about why do I want to do this thing? Because at the end of the day, it's that passion and that why that's going to sustain it. 2009, y'all, we are in 2022. You know what I mean? So I got my
Mhm.
book deal in 2020. So that was 11 years after
Wow.
I started my blog. You know what I mean? And again, I never had that outlook. So
Mm.
I think that's really important to consider. And as far as the book, I didn't actually plan to write the book. I didn't have a grand plan. National Geographic reached out to me, which is how that book came about.
Mm. Talk about a partnership, right? National Geographic for a traveler. We've had like some amazing travelers on the show, but I'm telling you, Jessica, nobody has come through with a National Geographic cosign. So, what has that experience been like, right? Because a lot of us, I remember as a kid, and even to this day, like I will cut it on right now, and I would just be stuck. How has that partnership been for you?
Yeah, it's been great. Like I love my editor, Allison Johnson. She is so amazing. The head of National Geographic Adult Books, Lisa Thomas, has been amazing. One of my favorite parts of it is that it was actually designed by a Black woman. Because I know when a lot
Wow.
of people pick up the book, the first thing they say is, "This is gorgeous." It was a Black woman that designed that, which I love. She's internal at Nat Geo on the graphics team, but I love that. And it's been so amazing. And I think I'm really glad that it has worked out the way that it has because, like you said, growing up, everybody watches
Mm-hmm.
National Geographic, and like National Geographic really holds the canon for travel. You know what I mean? Like that's the
Absolutely.
Bible. And so the fact that now this book by me, which I was so intentional in how I did it. I was so intentional in the countries that I chose and the images that I chose to include for the 100 of the 195 countries in the book. And that it just means so much because it changes the way people will see the world. And that National Geographic stamp really solidifies sort of the authority behind it, if you will.
Oh gosh, man, it stamps it, right? Like you are that go to. You know, one thing that I like about you that you are, I even doing it in this interview, is that you're very intentional, right? You talk about the intentional that it was a Black woman that did the cover. You talk about the intentional that, hey, these specific countries for these reasons. One of the things I wrote down is that you said in a previous interview you wanted cultural experiences in every country you visited so that you knew, okay, what makes this unique, right? As you're doing that, what were some of the things that stood out to you as you were finding like this uniqueness in these countries?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the joy of being in that specific country. And I think again, it's all about your why. I see a lot of people traveling now and they're just there for pictures. A lot of times people don't
Mm,
even like engage with local communities or like locals at all. And to me, it's such a missed opportunity because if you're going to travel somewhere, you're just traveling to just sit at the pool or you know what I mean? So for me, it was like I want to talk to people. I want to eat in really super local places. Like I want to go eat somewhere where there are no other tourists. And for me, that's just important because when I go to a country, to your point, I want to understand what's unique about this country.
hmm
And to me, I have to really engage with the people to get that out of it.
I like that. You touched on something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's food and eating. Right. So look, listen, for the sake of our audience, for the sake of us who are trying to make it to, a couple of those 195 countries. All right, like let's go ahead and say it. Which country has the best food?
I don't do like I'm not y'all. I'm like journalists love superlatives, which this is the best, and I don't do that. Like honestly, I love so many things in life. Like I'm not because people ask me my favorite country a lot of times. I'm like,
Yeah,
I have one. I love so many things in life. Why do I have to pick one?
I know that's right.
so many things make me happy. When I think about food, I think about Georgia, the country of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I think about Trinidad and Tobago. I think about
Mm.
Senegal and Japan and Italy. All of these places where I love the food. And for me, there's no reason to choose one. So
I like that. I like that answer, right? Because it depends on what mood you in, right? Like what mood you in
exactly.
is key. And you know, there's a lot of women who listen to this show, and they're going to be inspired by this interview and inspired by hearing about what you've done as the first Black woman. I think you've also went to, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 89 countries solo. Right? What have you learned by traveling to that many countries solo as a woman?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I learned is that most people are good,
Mm,
because a lot of people will say, "Oh my God, you're traveling solo as a woman. Oh my God, you're traveling solo as a Black woman." And what I find interesting, even about that line of questioning, is this overriding assumption that as a Black woman, it's even worse for you to be out there in the world. And quite honestly, that's BS. Because it's we why do we assume the worst of people? Because that's really what it boils down to.
yep.
How am I aware? How am I able to just go out and travel on my own, looking the way that I look? Is because I am not afraid of people. You know what I mean?
Mm,
My journey was made beautiful by the kindness of strangers. And if you're not afraid of people, what are you afraid of? And so I ask people, interrogate that fear. We unfortunately, in particular in the US, we live in a society where media is constantly trying to make us afraid of strangers,
mm,
trying to make us afraid of our neighbors. But and I hope this is what people get out of the book. The biggest lesson I learned is that kindness of strangers. I've had to drop down in Iraq and Libya, and all types of places, Afghanistan, where I had to rely on a stranger to, number one, give me an amazing experience in their country, and number two, ensure that I'm safe and
mm.
nothing has ever gone wrong. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's powerful. It's always like that fear that we have, inside, right? But in reality, like you said, like people are good. Like there's good people out here. And I think that's so impactful. And I'm thankful that you mentioned that. I want to ask you a question now that everyone who's ever been on this podcast, they've all been asked it, but it'd be so interesting to hear what your thoughts are about this question. And that is that person who is getting ready to walk across that stage, grab that degree, or that person who perhaps they didn't even graduate school at all, but they're listening to the show trying to figure out what's next for them. Asking themselves, the question of the podcast, school's over, now what? What advice would Jessica give?
Yeah, what I would say is be inspired by people you see online and by stories you read, by books that you read. Be inspired, but I really think it's important for you to sit with yourself and again find that why. What is your why? Because unfortunately, now I feel like a lot of people see someone's success on Instagram and they're like, I'm going to do the same thing. And
Mm.
it's like, no, that makes sense for that person. And it's okay to be inspired by something, but you really have to figure out what makes sense for you. I do believe that everyone has everything inside of them already to do absolutely anything that they want to do, but it's really important that you figure out what is your why and that use that to guide you doing every single thing that you do going forward.
Oh, I love that. What a powerful way to like drive that message home. Jessica, one thing that I think our audience is going to take away from this interview is your ability to connect the dots, your ability to observe, listen, and figure out, okay, how can I, do something that's going to impact others and be the first, right? You're the first Black woman, to do this. One thing that I noticed about you and read that is that when you were in Bali, out of all the places you went to, I feel like, Bali might be that one place where people go and they just like have this amazing discovery. But you were in Bali, and that's when you really started to connect the dots. Can you tell the audience just a little bit about that experience? 'Cause I think that's going to be very beneficial for somebody.
Yeah, Bali is definitely a place where everybody goes for like this, spiritual experience. And I won't lie, that's definitely why I went there. And yeah, like it was at a time where I quit my job, I think 2 years before I had started my travel agency. So I was running my boutique luxury travel agency at the time. And I was just kind of like, what am I doing with my life? I'd been like on paper, I had been really successful. I'd had several successful careers across industries, across countries, and I was just really unhappy. And it was during my time in Bali that I decided that I wanted to be the first Black woman to visit every country in the world. And then I completed that like 2.5 years later. And
Wow.
part of it was spurred by my strong desire to be interviewed by Oprah. So I'm like, Oprah, are you listening? I'm here waiting for you.
Oh, it's gonna
But yeah,
happen.
and that's a weird why, but everything changed as I was going. And I think now for me, so much of what I do, what really drives me is my desire to use my storytelling to reduce bias. So in everything that I do, I'm trying to like create these bridges and this like connection because I feel like we're losing our humanity. And everything I do is about reconnecting us to our humanity, getting people to think, better of the world, better of themselves, better of strangers, and really helping people to see that the world truly is our neighborhood and we should all be good neighbors.
Mm.
So, what happened in Bali was one step that led me to where I am now.
Oh, that's powerful. Listen, I think that you are just on the beginning of what you're going to do. Oprah's definitely going to be calling along with everyone else, and I wouldn't be surprised. And this would be a funny one for our audience. I wouldn't be surprised, Jessica, if you you did this again. If you did it, you say you would not.
I can guarantee you that will not happen. I don't even know what it would take for somebody to convince me to go to every country in the world again. I mean, at this point, I would have like probably like 145 or something like that, roughly, to
Wow.
do it again because I've been to about 50 countries more than once.
Mm.
But I don't really see that happening.
Well, all right, we see Oprah. We see Oprah happening. That's for sure. Listen, right now, our audience wants to learn more about you. They want to know where they can get the book, guys. We got the book in the show notes, but make sure our audience can find you on social media. What's your platforms and how can they stay in touch?
Yeah, Jessica Nabongo on Instagram, the CMIYC on Twitter, but just Google me, child.
I like that. Guys, thank you for listening. And for those, always remember, I want you to always remember this. Dream it, believe it, go out and get it. Hey, what's up, fam? Thanks for watching. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button. We'll see you next week here at School's Over Now What. And always remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it.